Hello, Professor. My name is Cynthia, and I will be doing a PowerPoint presentation on my survey findings on gun control. The method I used in collecting my data was mainly using questionnaires and surveys. And I did this primarily because I wanted to be able to reach more people. That is, most of my surveys, if not all of them, were sent online via email. So that way I could reach a vast majority of people better. And my focus was on gun control in the United States. My sample description. My sample consisted of a very diverse group of people, and I was very impressed by that. They were people of different ages, education, gender, even beliefs, because I noticed that a lot of them had different beliefs and point of views when it came to the topic of gun control. For example, the question of, is gun control necessary in the United States? 53.3% of them believed it is, and 20% believed it's not, and another 20% believes that maybe it could be necessary, and about, I believe, 6.7% just did not answer. So for me, this, although has more people believing that gun control is necessary, still gave me an idea that, some people do not believe it's necessary, and so on and so forth. So I like that it was diverse in terms of their beliefs. Even if whenever you scroll down on the people who had firearms or those who are in support of gun control legislations, you could kind of see the mix, even though it's not proportional or equal. You could tell that, the people who took the survey had different opinions, if you will. And also, I noticed my diversity in terms of gender. Of course, the majority were males, and which is about 50% of my survey participants. And 36.7%, of course, were female. 10% did not answer, and about 3.3% were non-binary. And looking at the education level, you can see that nice little diversity over there. And also in terms of age, the youngest in this group were 18 up until 38, which is the age range for the youngest, up until 81 to 100 years plus. And not a whole lot, if any, for this age group right here, but it's still diverse in my opinion, because ages 18 to 80 is a pretty good number of responses. But moving on. So my sample description, of course, as you noticed, consisted of, gender diversity, including those who chose not to answer, and also, if I can move this, it's not letting me. Okay. So anyway, also has the percentage of people who believed whether gun control was necessary or not. And moving on, as I continue with my sample description, the level of education, like we already saw, if we didn't, I'm going to go right back there, has to do with people who had their bachelor's degree, associate's degree, a master's, a PhD degree, a high school diploma, or none. And for the age, we had, of course, 18 to 38, 39 to 59, 60 to 80, and 80 to 100 plus. But let's go back to the level of education. I don't believe I was able to display that. So the people who participated in my survey, or my participants, majority of them were high school or GED holders, which is a nice, fine percentage. I wasn't surprised by my findings, because I can assume that most of the people I chose were either, on the younger side, and have their own opinion as well, and followed by 26.7% who have a bachelor's degree. I was shocked by this number, I'm going to be honest, because I was expecting maybe after the high school diploma or GED, the next category would be the associate's degree, for obvious reasons. After your high school diploma, you get your associates, hopefully your bachelor's, your master's, your PhD, and so on and so forth, right? I wasn't surprised by my master's or PhD findings because there's only a small percentage of people who have those degrees anyways. Those who did not answer was shocking to me because I don't understand why that number, that percentage is what it is. But moving on to the PowerPoint on slide 6. So based on the data and the data collection, my analysis was that there were a few notable overarching patterns in my survey data, which include 53% of my participants believe that there is need for gun control in the United States. I'm sorry you can't see the ES. My screen is not properly aligned. And also, nearly 57% of my participants do not own firearms, and about 50% of my participants were males. We've already seen these numbers and these data on the charts. But I do want to mention that these are pretty high numbers compared relative to the other numbers of my participants in terms of their opinions. Now, going back to my results, which I believe is question number 2. It says here, the number of people who own firearms are 56.7%. I wasn't expecting this number. I would have thought it would be maybe fewer number of people. I beg your pardon. 56.7% with number of people who do not own firearms. I beg your pardon about that. The number of people who actually do are 36.7%. So yes, this number wasn't shocking to me because I know that a majority of American families or those who live in the United States do not own firearms for whatever reasons. It could range from religious reasons to just personal preferences. And those who own firearms own it for a myriad of reasons, Second Amendment or for hunting reasons or just for the love of firearms. But I do want to point out here that a majority of my participants do not own firearms. Now, this may not depict the bigger picture of, most Americans, but based on my survey, I can make this deduction or analysis that a majority of Americans do not own firearms. So, moving on. So, my analysis continued. Like I mentioned, 50% of people believe in gun control, and you've already seen this chart already. Whether you own firearms or not, I don't think it has anything to do with whether you believe in gun control or not. What I mean by that is this: I know a few people who own guns. They're like a gun family, military families, and they still believe in some type of gun control. That's amazing to me because when a lot of people think about gun control, they're thinking, oh, most people who want this gun control are probably those who do not have weapons of their own. But I just wanted to point out that that's not true. Some people, which is actually a lot of them who have guns or weapons, believe in some type of gun control due to the chaos of our current legislations. So moving on. Also, based on my survey results, more people believe in some type of gun control in the United States, like I already showed to you earlier. 20% of my participants think that gun control is not necessary. Oof, that wasn't quite a shocker based on the numbers, but I still would have loved to understand their point of view for those people who do not believe in any type of gun control. The other 20% believe that gun control may be necessary. In case you forgot the chart, right here, the 20% who believe it's not necessary, there's a 20% here who think it could be necessary, but they're not very sure. And of course, the majority was the 53.3% who believe that gun control is necessary. Moving on. So my analysis continued, and I apologize again that some of my letters are a bit cut out of the screen. So when it came to the question of owning firearms, nearly 57% do not own firearms. which, isn't shocking. Um, Next slide. So, more than half of my participants do not own firearms, like you've already observed. This goes to show that fewer than half of Americans do not have firearms, which can make sense from my analysis. About 37% of Americans own firearms. This number, although relatively smaller than, the bigger picture, let me go back to this real quick so we can get it nicely. Although relatively smaller than, the 56.7%, this number is still relatively high when you think about it. Now, I'll say again, this may not depict the actual numbers, national numbers, but this is based on my own survey. So 36.7 still sounds or seems like a lot to me, even though it's not as many as those who do not currently own firearms. Moving on. So like we've already seen, 50% of my participants were males, nearly 37% of them were females, and the remaining 10% did not answer. So I'm still a little bit iffy about this, my gender participants. I wonder why it was more males than females. I'm going to be honest. Although I'm not too bothered by it, I still wonder why, I had more males than females. It could be because males tend to purchase or own more firearms than women. That would be my first analysis or deduction. And, females, although, believe in weapons or use weapons or have guns, maybe not as much as males. Now, for my conclusion, based on my data analysis, I was able to determine that most Americans believe in some type of gun control. Although most of them do not own firearms, nearly 50% of Americans do not want the NRA to be defunded, and I'm going to show you that chart shortly. Based on my participants' age, gender, and level of education, I can understand why more of them believe in gun control. Now, let me run quickly to the NRA chart, just so you can have a visual of where I'm coming from. Now, the question was, should the NRA or the National Rifle Association be defunded? And most people said no. I was surprised considering that most people do not own firearms. And then what is the correlation of those people who do not own firearms to make the determination that they want the NRA to be defunded? But let me move on because I only have so much time left. Now, the policies. Here's what I think. The issue of gun violence is a very serious one, no doubt. Gun violence is a leading cause of premature death in the United States. Guns kill more than 38,000 people and cause nearly 85,000 injuries each year. That's sad and pathetic. I believe that there needs to be more in-depth background checks before firearms can be purchased. There is a current, scrutiny in check for firearm purchases, but I just believe there needs to be more because a lot of people are purchasing firearms legally and they should not have access to one to begin with. Additionally, anyone who has been deemed incapable of handling a firearm should never be allowed to gain access to one. That is my opinion, by the way. Let me also add that there are many black markets for the illegal sale and purchase of guns, which may defeat the purpose of any legislation. But any legislation will be the first step in the right direction. So what I mean by this is that even if the gun control legislation was put in place, there is still currently an illegal underground black market for the sale of guns. So whether there's a legislation or not, people who want to purchase guns can still purchase it illegally. And those people may not necessarily be on the radar for any kind of background checks, which would be unfortunate. But I still stand that any kind of legislation will still be a good decision to make because that way at least we can control the legal purchase of guns. To further the passing of any gun legislation, the National Rifle Association may need to be scrutinized more closely. So what this just means that even if the National Rifle Association is not defunded, I believe that they need to be scrutinized a little bit more because they have a lot of resources, a lot of power in when it comes to gun control and guns in general. This is the end of my presentation, Professor. It's been nice attending this class. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day. Bye bye.